One Piece, chapter 955, Enma. So wow, this was quite the chapter. Really good, really exciting, a lot of development. So that means there's a lot to talk about, but I'll try to keep it concise, so let's get into it. So we're seeing that the Scabbards, and more so just the rest of the Alliance, is finding out that Hiyori is alive, so that's sealing up that storyline, but it's also aiding to the whole traitor thing that we're going to be talking about later. And then we see that Hitetsu finally gets his swords back, more so all three of them. You know, the two swords that went to Odin, and then Nidai Kitetsu, which has been recurring throughout this arc. We saw very early on that Zoro was attracted to it. He was like, hey, let me see that sword. So that's just sealing up this, something that's just been recurring. And maybe we thought that he was going to get Nidai Kitetsu, but he's not. It's kind of just like, hey, this was a sword that is a named sword. It's a grade sword. It's a great sword. Just like Wado Ichimonji is, as well as Enma. And speaking of Enma, Zoro is officially receiving this sword here, and the way that he's receiving this is very similar to how he received Shushui back in Thriller Bark, and it makes sense because they are very similar swords. They are of like the same grade, and they have a very similar origin as well, although Shushui was already a blackened blade, as to where this can become blackened, as Hitetsu says, and I assume that that means that maybe by the time this arc is over, it will be blackened, considering all of the hockey that it sucks up from Zoro. So let's get into that, because as soon as Zoro picks up this sword, he tries to even use it, it just sucks his arm dry, like sucks the energy out of him, sucks the Ryo, the hockey as they're saying. But he's able to fight back, he's able to like regain his composure. But even him just swinging the sword and just trying to cut a tree, like, it makes an unnecessarily large strike, as they say, and it just cuts that entire rock face in half. So this is an ultra-powerful sword, a very needed power-up for Zoro here, because this is, in fact, what this is. It's not just an arsenal upgrade here. It just seems like it's probably more powerful than Shushui. I mean, it does seem like it might be a lateral upgrade, just going from more of the same, because, Shushui is the similar grade to that of Enma, but it just seems like it's probably more significant here, especially since he's gaining it at this point in the story, going into the war. It seems like it probably needs to be more powerful, but more so the way that Zoro reacts to it. And he says that, oh, if I'm able to master this, then I'll become stronger, and that's what we're seeing here, because he's just going to go on to train for the next 2 days after this. So Zoro, just like Luffy, is going to get a power-up here, and him just being able to use this sword and master it in the short time that he has is going to make him stronger, probably make his hockey stronger as well. So this is Zoro's power-up, more or less. He's getting Enma, very powerful sword, but also just him being able to use it is making him stronger as a result. So here we go. Zoro's gotten his power-up. Luffy's gotten his power-up, or he is going to get it. I mean, he already has with his Ryo hockey push thing that he's developed. But it's just unfortunate that Sanji it kind of seems to be left out here of the so-called monster trio. Like Sanji, I don't know, we focused on a lot of him in Whole Cake. So I guess, we're just going to more so focus on Zoro, who's been out of the picture for so long. So then it's revealed that the combined forces of the Beast Pirates and Orochi's crew is going to be like 30,000 dudes. And this does seem pretty intimidating, but, most of those, like 95% of those are like fodder dudes, more or less. I mean, maybe some of them are kind of, impressively strong just for a fodder guy. Maybe they're like gifter level, but still, we've seen numbers like this before, in the Fishman Island arc. And I assume that they're probably going to go down just like how they did. Maybe not just with like a Conqueror hockey like area of effect attack that Luffy did, but maybe Luffy and just Zoro or just everyone in general can just do like these massive blasts. Maybe Luffy could do like a ultimate Ryu blast that like just sends like this huge shockwave that just takes out thousands of dudes at once. I just see something similar happening here. Now maybe not immediately. Maybe we are going to have a full-on scale war where there's just thousands of dudes going at it, but there is going to be a turning point to where, like, at least 25,000 of these dudes are going to have to go down, maybe with one big, massive attack, and I think that's what we're going to see. But there could be another thing that happens. Maybe it's just not a repeat of what happened in Fishman Island, But we see that Frankie, he's talking about working on the ships and everything, and how we're going to have to make these ships able to carry 10,000 people just to be safe. And that's kind of odd, you know, because they only have 4,000 people. So why would each ship need to carry 10,000 people? And he's saying, well, let's just make a bet to see how many people will gather. And I just think it's kind of odd that they're putting out there. So it could mean that they're going to gain reinforcements. Now, probably not on Wano, because it doesn't seem like they have an extra 15,000 or even 5,000 or 6,000 extra dudes to just come supplement them. So this could mean that the Grand Fleet, maybe, is going to come back into play. That would just make this war and arc all the much grander, but I just don't expect them to come back into play so soon, even though it's not really soon. I mean, in the time scale of the actual series, it is kind of soon. It's only been like, a week since that's happened, so maybe. But do they even know that they're in Wano? And there's so many things that go into this, and I just expected that the Grand Fleet would probably come around towards Raftel. You know, maybe I'm thinking too much into the future, but it does seem like something is going to happen here, at least to give credence to what Frankie's talking about. So as I said earlier, we further see them training throughout the remaining days that we have here, which is good. And we also see Luffy using Gear 4, using the King Kong gun, but with like his Ryu upgrade to it, which is pretty cool. We're definitely going to see that used in the upcoming war for sure. Maybe even Snake Man, or maybe even like another form that we have yet to see. Like, I'm always assuming that we're just going to see another flashback of Luffy on the island with Rayleigh, and then it's just like, oh, well, that's why I developed Gear 5, or that's why I developed this form. You know, it could always just keep happening, and then he's just been saving these secret forms for now. I don't think that's going to happen. But I do feel that he's might get like a Deus Ex power-up against Kaido. He's going to need something besides just the Ryu and the training that he's had through these couple days. Maybe he'll get his awakening, or maybe he'll just on the spot develop Gear 5 or something. It remains to be seen. It's just all speculation. But also, we're finding out something pretty cool about Zoro, and that it's his Wado Ichimonji sword that he's had since Kuina's days. That was actually made by Hitetsu, and that's pretty cool. But it's also like giving a reason why he's able to use Enma so well so quickly. It's because they are similar swords, and the fact that they're so similar, and he's been using, you know, one, so it makes sense that he'd be able to use the other rather quickly, also given how ridiculously strong Zoro is at this point in the story, so it totally makes sense. Then we're getting that Black Blade line that I was talking about, where Hitetsu says, in your hands, I'm sure it will reach that level, since Enma is not yet a Black Blade. So maybe we'll see it in this arc. It just seems like it might take a little more time for it to become a Black Blade, unless he could just fast track it there, and just whatever Zoro's super training, or whatever super move that he's going to do, or just his fighting throughout this war, maybe it will just push it to being that Black Blade. Similar to what we've seen with Sushui, and also Yoru, Mihawk's blade. So now that we have that out of the way, let's get into this whole traitor stuff. So Orochi has somehow found out that Udon is not under their control, and that it was a false report, and that Hiyori is actually alive, something that he was unaware of, and that the meetup spot has changed from the Port Habu to the Port Tokage, something that we found out like 2 chapters back when the whole signal sign thing was changed as per request posthumously of Yasui. So how did this happen? Interestingly enough, we're seeing Law in the panel next to Orochi revealing this. So does that mean that Law is the traitor? I don't think it's likely that Law is. I think this is probably a red herring from Oda here, or at least I hope it is. It would be pretty tragic if Law is the traitor here. Now, let's go over the possibilities. So if Law is the one who relayed this information to Orochi, it doesn't necessarily mean that he's a traitor, and this could ultimately be benefiting Law and the Alliance, him allowing Orochi to know this. Obviously, there's some reason that he would need it, but also we can't forget about the whole weirdness that has been going on with him and Hawkins throughout the last few chapters. Also, it seemed like he was conspiring with X-Drake, which hasn't been revealed yet, so maybe X-Drake, obviously he's in on the whole Kaido and Orochi stuff, so he knows more than pretty much anyone outside of the Alliance. Maybe X-Drake relayed something to Law that would, made him feel that it would be beneficial to give this information to Orochi. Maybe they're conspiring together to take down Orochi, and then him knowing this helps X-Drake and Law out, and Hawkins by proxy as well. So that's the only reason I would think that Law has anything to do with being a traitor here, which I don't think is the case, but like I said. So The other case is that it's Shinobu. Shinobu has been weird. She also just straight up discredited Law earlier in this chapter, you know, trying to make him seem suspicious. But also, Shinobu is one of the people who was there when the information about Hiyori being alive was relayed. So it has to essentially be one of the people in that group, one of the scabbards, one of the people that we saw earlier in this arc that received that information. And Shinobu is the one that's been very suspicious about all of this stuff. Also, you know, it was kind of odd seeing her reflect on those prisoners being in prison and how she just kept, like, deflecting away from it. Like, oh, there's no way to help them. We just need to forget about it. So that could be adding to her being the traitor, possibly. Also, she's a ninja. She could be one of Orochi's ninja, because we know that he has a whole bunch of those that were defeated by Zoro, but maybe she was just a lingering one that was like a double agent at the same time. That's all possible. Or she's not the traitor, and maybe it was a mink. Because the minks, who haven't been touched on a while, have just been shown in this chapter earlier. You know, we saw Carrot in the other one. So, you know, we also have to remember that back in Zou, that it's kind of implied that there was like a mink traitor who told Jack about Raizo being there. I mean, that's how Jack knew to go to Zou and how he knew Raizo was there and everything. So maybe this is just the same traitor the whole time. It's possible that it was Beppo. That's kind of possible, I guess. Maybe. Kind of unlikely. But those are the three possibilities I see here. Either it's, you know, Law kind of being a red herring, kind of beneficially supplying Orochi with this information, if that makes sense. Or it's Shinobu, and she's just a straight up unredeemable traitor. Or it's one of the minks from Zou. And then there's like this small possibility that's Hiyori. Maybe Hiyori is not actually Hiyori. Maybe there's some kind of weird stuff going on with her. Maybe it's like a doppelganger thing, because she's been kind of odd in this chapter too. Like, why didn't she want to show herself to the rest of the 9 Red Scabbards? But also, you know, how does that, you know, justify her being normal with Kawamatsu? Wouldn't Kawamatsu not know? Or maybe she was able to trick him? I don't know. So many possibilities here. But let me know what you think about this in the comments. Who do you think the traitor is? What do you think's going on here? And what do you think is going to happen after this? Because we're coming to the end of the second act. And from what I've heard, I think there's going to be 5 acts in this arc. Something crazy like that. But I assume that the rest of the acts won't be as long as this one. Or at least one of them won't be. But if you liked it, please give it a like. I also have a Patreon. It gives you access to a weekly Q&A. And if you haven't already, please subscribe as well. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.